Let's get ready to mortgage. He is the prince of programs, guru of guidelines, master of matrices. He puts the fun in funding. Please welcome Mark, Mr. Mortgage, it-HELOC.
All right, you heard the man. My name is Mark it-HELOC, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show, and thank you so much for spending a bit of your weekend with us. We, as always, are going to cover the topics of the week, dive into what's happening in the world of interest rates and real estate. And yeah, we're gonna dive right in. But before we do that, I want to cover just a couple of quick things. Recapping the week. I guess let me start there. Recapping the week. Interest rates remain kind of flat. We're in a trading channel. We've been there for a while. We look like we're going to stay there. I know a few weeks ago we had a show. I think we titled it on the podcast, "What if Putin starts shooting?" And we were referencing what would happen in the interest rate environment. And when Russia started to invade Ukraine, there was a little bit of a pullback as we anticipated. However, it didn't stay very long. Rates, they pulled back maybe about 1/8 of a point for a couple of days, and we were able to. We got some preferential locks, and some clients were happy, but rates didn't move down for long, and they bounced right back, and they continued to remain virtually unchanged over the last several weeks. And you'll see, headlines that say rates are down, but just kind of read that first line and underneath the headline, they might have moved, 0.03. So, a 3.99 might be 3.96, or a 4.25 might be 4.21, but not significant moves. As far as I'm concerned, I just class all that as, a flat channel that we're trading in. So not a lot of news there on the interest rate side, although we are definitely watching Europe to see if there are any impacts beyond what we've already felt. But hey, listen, this week was Tuesday. We celebrated National Women's Day. And I know a lot of us are still celebrating National Women's Day. In my house and in my life, it's kind of National Women's World, if you will. I was super blessed to be raised by a very strong and capable woman in my mother. So she was an amazing lady. And I've been blessed to be surrounded by strong women my entire life. So Mrs. Mortgage is one heck of a woman, and I'm blessed to have her in my life. But yeah, in celebration of the National Women's Week, let's call it, and the sisterhood that is contained within, I did a little research, and I found it super interesting that there are more single women who own real estate than single men in the primary residential space. So I found that really interesting, because if you dig a little bit deeper, these ladies are doing it with less. The average female income for the same job is 84%, as per the study that I read. So doing the same job with less income, and they're out there purchasing more property and making it happen. There are 53% of homeowners are single women households. So found that super interesting. One more thing that we can celebrate about the ladies. So just thank you, ladies, for keeping us men in line. And in the world of real estate, there are a lot of powerful women. So we celebrate you, and thank you for allowing us to share your space. So also this week, we saw a report released that mortgage applications crept back up almost 9% in the reporting period. And that was interesting, because interest rates continue to have slight upward pressure, and we're, in some cases, a full half a point or 3/4 of a point over where we were, just a couple months ago. But I think people are seeing a newfound urgency to jump into the market. They don't want to miss out. They see rates going up, which is also impacting their purchasing power. So it's my belief, because of that, we saw a jump in purchase applications in the mortgage world, as well as cash out refinances. And I'm going to touch on that in 1 minute. We're kind of entering a new cycle, and I'm going to call it the Jan cycle, and I'll explain that in a moment. So I thought that was kind of an interesting statistic that popped out this week, that mortgage applications jumped up 9%. So foreclosures still remain historically low. There is a little more foreclosure activity, but we're going from a not zero, but relatively low, darn near 0% foreclosure rate to starting to see some more filings. And I think there were about 2,600 completed mortgage foreclosures in February in the state of Florida, which is typically a leading state in foreclosure activity. So foreclosures remain scarce, the market remains hot, and the ladies are out there getting it done. So that's kind of wrapping up the week where we were this last week. And let me jump into that Jan phenomenon, if you will. I don't know how many of you grew up watching the Brady Bunch or had kids that watched the Brady Bunch, but if I remember correctly, the middle sister was Jan, and there are a lot of homeowners like Jan out there right now. What do I mean by that? Well, you don't really want to sell. You're kind of stuck in this middle, right? You want to capitalize on the equity, and it's a great time to do so, but you look around at what's available to then go purchase, and you're thinking, wow, there's not anything that I like better out there, certainly not for the price points. And I know that's not everybody's case, but a lot of people that I talk to are in that space where they really love their neighborhood, but they're sitting on significant equity, and they're thinking to themselves, man, what an amazing time to sell my property and go out there and buy a bigger, more beautiful property. But then they start looking and realize, wow, well, wait a minute, if I sell my house for $800,000 and I take $400,000 of equity and I go out there and drop it on $1.2 million property, well, my taxes are going to be based on that higher purchase price. My insurance is going to be based on that higher value. Does it really make a lot of sense? I kind of like my neighbors. I wave at them every morning. My kids go to school in this school district. So there are people out there who are saying, okay, wait a minute, I feel stuck in the middle. And we're seeing some interest in the refinance space for people who want to renovate or put additions on their home. So they're taking that big nest egg of equity and reinvesting it in the property. And they're adding a bedroom or a bathroom or remodeling the kitchen and making the home that's in the neighborhood they already love, surrounded by the people they already love, and they're turning it into that home that they once fell in love with, and they're loving it all over again. So kind of interesting to see that happen in the marketplace, that there's that component of the market that really would like to live in a nicer home, if you will, from an amenity standpoint, but they don't want to pay for it, so they're going to do it in the form of renovations or an addition. And we looked at the top ways to increase the value of your property. I talked to Peter and his team over at SoFlo Appraisal. You hear me advertising for Peter's company a lot. And we had just a real casual discussion about where you can invest in your property to get the net gains, right? So we all know a pool's not the place. Very rarely can you recoup the cost of a pool. But, a new kitchen, a new bathroom, and by new I mean renovated, certainly can add to the value of the property. But adding living square footage, so adding an extra bedroom or an extra bathroom, improving the functionality of the home as well as the styling of the home, right? As I just mentioned with the kitchen and bath, there you're going to get some value. And then from the insurance side of things, we had the discussion, where are you going to get savings from improving the property? And the obvious jump out points are the roof and upgrading to impact windows. So I just share all that because this is kind of an undercurrent of this market. There's a lot of people who have significant newfound equity wealth, and they find themselves in a position where they really don't want to move, but they're enticed to do something with that equity. So if you're not one of those people who just want to sit on that nest egg for a long period of time and you want to use it to better your home, we're seeing that. We're seeing that Jan cycle in the market where we're doing the cash out refis for property improvement. So, and you hear me talk about the rec loan all the time. That's never going away. You can always cash out to pay things off, like consumer debt, pay off a car, motorcycle, boat, whatever the case may be. So you hear that police car sneaking up behind me. That means we're going to run to a break. On the other side of this, we're going to jump into some questions, and you can shoot your questions to the Anytime hotline, 561-291-8569. That's 561-291-8569, or visit the web, mr.mortgage. Thank you. Hey, it's Mark Eitel here, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. And you've heard me talk about the valuation tool that we use in our lending practice almost daily. It's not quite an appraisal, but it's way more accurate than one of those online estimates. And we're happy to run one of those reports for you at no charge. Just visit freevaluereport.org. That's freevaluereport.org. Give us a little information about the property, and we'll be happy to send you your report. That's freevaluereport.org.
Here's another 5-star review.
My wife and I own a small business. And the way our accountant file our taxes, we don't show much income on tax returns. Because of this, it looks as if we don't make the money. This was a problem for our bank when we applied for a mortgage. But not for Mark. He verifies our income by using our monthly bank statements. Mark and his Mr. Mortgage team made a big difference for me. Yes, I am happy to recommend Mr. Mortgage Mark.
It's not every day that you need an appraisal, whether it's for a divorce settlement, estate planning, or maybe you're appealing a tax assessment, or you just want to make sure you have adequate coverage in your property insurance. When you need a certified appraisal, turn to my friends at soflappraisal.com. That's soflappraisal.com. Peter and his team have been appraising properties here in South Florida for decades. soflappraisal.com. And tell them you heard this on the Mr. Mortgage Show.
Are inflation and everyday expenses eating into your retirement income? Maybe you've considered a reverse mortgage and have unanswered questions like, do I still own my property? Can the bank kick me out? What happens when I die? Can I still leave my house to my kids? These are all great questions. Visit www.moreaboutreverse.com to learn more. That's www.moreaboutreverse.com. www.moreaboutreverse.com.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now, 561-291-8569.
All right, you heard him. 561-291-8569 is the Anytime hotline. And by anytime, I mean literally anytime. It rings here in the studio when Dom and I are here at the show, and Dom's my producer. And it pushes to my office during the week. So if you have questions, that's a great way to get us, 561-291-8569. Or as always, the website, www.mr.mortgage. There's never a .com. Just type in mr.mortgage. And you'll find us. So, yeah, I mean, we talked about the Jan phenomenon. So instead of stomping your foot and yelling, Marsha, 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 there might be a chance to capitalize on some of that equity for home improvement. So last thing I wanted to touch on, I got a little bit sidetracked there with Jan, was, you know, with what's going on in Europe, there's a lot of Russian investment in real estate in the States, and in Florida primarily a lot. So there was a study released, or a report. I call everything a study, but a report that NAR, National Association of Realtors, released this week, that there's some curiosity, if you will, what's going to happen to the Russian investor. We see in the news that the yachts are being seized from the oligarchs, and you know we're definitely putting pressure on Russia in that aspect. So what's going to happen to their real estate? And they're cautiously watching that. And I just found this interesting. This is just kind of an oh, by the way, but 29% of Russian investment in the United States real estate market is in the state of Florida, 16% in the state of Georgia, which really surprised me because for some reason I don't imagine a Russian guy with a pickup truck and a six-pack running through Georgia. But hey, I'm a Florida hillbilly, so I'll be right out there with them. But yeah, 16% in Georgia, 13% in New York, which again surprised me. I thought that would have been higher. 8% in California, and 5% in Illinois, and the rest is split up over the country. So it'll be interesting to see if there's some seizures on the real estate side. There doesn't appear to be any pressure there now. There was a report in Forbes magazine. Dolly Lentz is one of the top, mega agents for that multi-million-dollar international investor, and she was quoted as saying she's getting a lot of phone calls from Russian clients who are wondering if now is a good time to sell. So if you got 15 or 20 million laying around and you want to pick up a deal, you might want to give one of your Russian buddies a call and take that property off his hands. But we'll keep you up to date with that. It's just kind of a byproduct of the international world that we live in, and in the Florida real estate market in particular, there's a lot of international players. But so as promised, we're going to jump into questions. I know Dom is alerting me that we got one queued up, so I'm going to throw it over to Dom and see what we have on the question line. What do we have, Dom?
All right, we have Sue from Port St. Lucie. Sue is asking, is it better to do a cash out refinance or to get an equity line? I have a great credit if that matters.
Hey, Sue, that's a great question. And I'm assuming that's, following up on what we just talked about, right? Pulling some of that equity out to do some work around the house or pay off some bills. So there's not really an easy answer to that question, with the exception of what are you going to do with the money? If you just want to set it up, the equity line that is, so you have an emergency rainy day fund, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense because there are often no closing costs, if so, very little closing costs with an equity line of credit. And then you don't have a monthly payment with that equity line unless you actually use the money. So it's basically like a credit card that's collateralized by your property. It's exactly as it sounds, a line of credit. So if you just want an emergency rainy day fund, that may make sense. But if your thoughts with an equity line of credit are pulling money out to invest in the property and into your home, you're going to want to ask yourself, how reasonable is it that you're going to pay that off in a relatively short period of time? Are you going to pay that, pull a chunk out, redo the kitchen, and then do you think you can tackle that debt over the course of the next 5 years? Then it may make sense. But if you're looking at, big expenditures and you want to stabilize that monthly payment, because I guess one other thing I should probably touch on is typically the equity line of credit is often interest only, most of the time for about a 10-year period. But that interest rate floats. So we all know what's going on in the interest rate environment that we're in. They're going up. We are at the bottom of the interest rate environment from now forward. Yes, they were lower last year, but they're going to be higher next year, especially things like equity lines and credit cards because they're governed by other actions in the market. So anticipate that your equity line interest rate is going to increase over the time that you have it, and then do that payoff calculation. How long will it take you to pay it off? There's going to be, a break-even point or an inflection point, if you will, where it makes more sense just to roll it all into a fixed-rate mortgage product so you have that stable monthly payment. And from the sense that you're using it to reinvest in the property, theoretically gaining more equity, it's not at all bad advice to do that. And most importantly, that interest rate in a fixed-rate product doesn't change. So think about it that way. There's some super enticing equity line rates out there right now because they're typically tied to the prime rate. And depending on your credit score, it may be prime plus, a point or prime plus 2 points. Sometimes it's prime minus. There's really not a lot of room on the minus side right now. But when rates were 6 and 8%, we saw prime minus equity lines. But yeah, I would need to have a discussion with you, a little deeper talk about what you want to do with that money before we were able to adequately assess whether it makes sense to do it in a cash out refinance or in the form of that equity line. And listen, there's nothing stopping you from doing both, assuming that you don't, pull out too much equity in the cash out refi. If there's additional equity left over later, you could always do that emergency rainy day strategy to put the equity line in place. But I have to also share too that if property values ever go down again, as they did in the crash, those equity lines get called. They'll turn it off. They'll turn the spigot off. If your equity line was approved to, 80, 90, 100% of the value as they were back then, and you might have $100,000 of unused credit in your equity line, and then your property values go down and the bank reassesses the risk level associated with that equity line, you might get the phone call that says, hey, we're going to close out your equity line. There's no longer enough equity in the property to justify it from the bank standpoint, or They may reduce it. So just all food for thought. And then lastly, I guess, let me share this. Most equity lines have what's called it's not a prepayment penalty, but it's a early termination fee. So if you take the equity line and you did some, quick renovations and sold the house to pay it off, that's where you'll pay the fees associated with the equity line. It's an early termination fee. But great question. I'm assuming it was following up the first part of the show. That's why I went into the conversation regarding what you're doing with it. If it's improvements, it may make sense just to do the cash out refi, roll it into a 30-year or 15-year mortgage payment, capitalize on these ridiculously low rates, and you've improved the value of your property. So hopefully that helps. I know there's a lot of people trying to figure out what the best way to use that equity is, and you hear me talk about it a lot. We talk about the REC loan, where people are, reducing, eliminating, and consolidating is what REC stands for. So we're taking your overall monthly your overall monthly debt expenditure, and including everything in it, your credit cards, your car payments, everything, and we're looking at the equity in the property. Does it make sense to take all of those payments and reduce them into one, maybe even eliminating them, but certainly consolidating them all into one payment? And does that dramatically reduce your monthly outflow? In the REC refinance world, it's less about interest rate. There's certainly that component. We don't want you to pay more interest than is unnecessary on your mortgage, but you're looking at basically a cash flow position in the REC refinance. And a lot of people are doing that with their equity and paying off those RVs that we all bought because we were going to travel the world during the pandemic and watch the beautiful sunsets in California. And, we all had these grandiose ideas that we were going to live off the grid. So if you've got that RV sitting there collecting dust along the side of your house and you want to pay that off, maybe the REC loan is the way to go. But hopefully that answered the question. I know there's often a lot more to the information we need to answer it, but yeah, if it's going to be something you pay off quickly, then the equity line may be the way to go. But we'll be back on the other side of this. 561-291-8569 is the Anytime hotline. 561-291-8569. Hey, it's Mark Eitel here, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. And you've heard me talk about the valuation tool that we use in our lending practice almost daily. It's not quite an appraisal, but it's way more accurate than one of those online estimates. And we're happy to run one of those reports for you at no charge. Just visit freevaluereport.org. That's freevaluereport.org. Give us a little information about the property, and we'll be happy to send you your report. That's freevaluereport.org.
Here's another 5-star review.
We started our loan with a different company. They said we were approved, but at the last minute they told us there was a problem. I still don't know what went wrong, but thankfully our real estate agent told us about Mark. I was pretty stressed, but it's the perfect house, so we gave Mark a shot. He got it done. I'm not sure what was different, but I don't really care. We even got a better interest rate and with less money out of pocket than the first guy quoted us. It was a great surprise. Yes, I'm happy to recommend Mark and his Mr. Mortgage team.
It's not every day that you need an appraisal, whether it's for a divorce settlement, estate planning, or maybe you're appealing a tax assessment, or you just want to make sure you have adequate coverage in your property insurance. When you need a certified appraisal, turn to my friends at SOFLappraisal.com. That's SOFLappraisal.com. Peter and his team have been appraising properties here in South Florida for decades. SOFLappraisal.com. And tell them you heard this on the Mr. Mortgage Show.
Are inflation and everyday expenses eating into your retirement income? Maybe you've considered a reverse mortgage and have unanswered questions like, do I still own my property? Can the bank kick me out? What happens when I die? Can I still leave my house to my kids? These are all great questions. Visit www.moreaboutreverse.com to learn more. That's www.moreaboutreverse.com. www.moreaboutreverse.com.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now, 561-291-8569.
All right. So I am Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. And again, I want to thank you for spending a little bit of your weekend with us. hopefully you'll get out and do some good stuff this weekend. But for now, we're super happy that you're settled in, maybe with a cup of coffee, or I don't know, maybe you had a long night last night and you still have a bottle of beer or a cocktail in your hand. I have no idea, but we're certainly glad that you're spending a bit of your weekend with us. So yeah, the Anytime hotline is 561-291-8569. That's 561-291-8569. And again, you can call or text any questions to that number. Dom, my producer, is manning that line now. And also it pushes to my office during the week. Or visit the website, www.mr.mortgage. That's mr.mortgage. So in the spirit of the show and keeping Dom busy, we're going to throw it over to him for another question. What do we have?
All right. I have Lonnie from Juneau. I see what seems to be too good to be true rates advertised on Facebook. Is this some kind of special program or just a scam?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of scams on Facebook, aren't there? I had a friend request from a ridiculously young and super attractive young lady who told me that I'm the man she always dreamed of, and she just needs me to help her make 1 or 2 mortgage payments. So, yeah, I can understand your hesitancy. There's a lot of interesting information on Facebook. So I guess to answer your question, it may not be a scam, but it may not be full disclosure, if you will. So oftentimes when a rate is advertised that just seems to be much lower than what you're hearing everywhere else, listen, we all want to believe what we want to believe, right? That 2% interest rate is still out there somewhere. And yes, I qualify for this magic special program. And there are some special programs out there, but usually not around interest rates. So it's most likely that you're not just reading deep enough into the disclosures, or maybe they just left them out, which is sad because that's illegal to do. But anyway, they may be charging points, and points, you can buy the rate down with origination or discount points. Or let's talk discount points for this conversation. What is a point? A point is a 1% of the loan amount. So on a $200,000 loan, 1 point is $2,000. So if you pay, typically you'll see in those ads 2 to 2.5 points. It'll say fine print on the bottom. That means you're going to pay a fee of 2 to 2.5% to buy that rate down. And what that means is, let's say the normal rate for that particular day, for that particular program was 3%. And I don't know, I'm just using round numbers for the sake of this example. And you see an ad for 1.99%, which is just a sexy way to advertise 2%. That's a full 1% difference. So you may have to pay 2 or 3 discount points to buy that rate down. And that's how oftentimes those ads work. And they're super enticing, right? You see that rate, and it's the rate that you saw in the paper 6 or 8 months ago. And we all want to think we're special. This is just for me. It's magic. I found it. But the reality is that most likely either it was intentionally left out by the advertiser, or it's just buried so deep in the fine print that you're not catching that. But if you're ever given a rate that seems too good to be true, my suggestion is just ask for a loan estimate, ask for a fee sheet, and ask them what fees are associated with this rate, because a lot of times we get caught up on the lowest rate. And we talked about it before, especially coming out of the environment of the last 2 years. There's that cocktail party rate where, you're leaning against the plate or against the bar, sipping your cocktail, overlooking the buffet with the plate of pigs in a blanket, and you're bragging to your neighbor that you got the 1.99% cash out refi with no points. So there's that vanity component to the interest rate, and we all associate that with the best deal. But oftentimes, more often than not, there's so many other moving parts to a rate that the lowest rate doesn't mean it's the least expensive program for you. So sometimes there's those upfront fees with buying that rate down. So I just share all that to encourage you to ask more questions. But I celebrate you for looking into it, because it's enticing. And if you're not buying yet, or you haven't purchased yet, I encourage you to do it. I know there's a lot of talk around the market. Is it still a good time to buy? And I pulled a report off the internet yesterday that was a home purchase sentiment index, and it was quite interesting, the topics that they were covering. So the first question was, is it a good time or a bad time to buy? And, not surprising because of prices and interest rates, 29% of people surveyed said it was a good time, but 67% said it was a bad time. And that's the part I mentioned was not surprising, because there's a lot of frustration surrounding people who feel they've been priced out of the market. And then another thing I found interesting was 72% of the people surveyed said it was a great time to sell. 46% of the people surveyed believe that home prices are going to continue to increase. And then will mortgage rates increase? 67% of people surveyed do believe they're going to increase. This was interesting. Coming out of the pandemic, with all of the uncertainty around employment, 87% of the people surveyed felt really good about their current job and that it was likely to continue, and they may see even a raise in the future. So that was a positive piece of this report. And then 27% of the people surveyed saw their household income increase. So a lot of good in that report, a lot of good reasons why, now may be a great time to consider buying. And you hear me talk about it all the time. If you want to get in real estate, sure, it would have been better to do it 2 years ago, but the next best time is today. So when it comes to the interest rate side of it, though, read the fine print. And I welcome the opportunity to walk you through what rate you would qualify for and what programs would be available if you're ever interested in that conversation. Just give us a call during the week. Like I said, that hotline number 561-291-8569 pushes to the office. But if you're not quite ready for a conversation and you're just in that info gathering stage, I encourage you to visit the website www.mr.mortgage. That's mr.mortgage. There's a lot of good information there that might help get you one step closer to making a decision. But yeah, those teaser rates are out there. Facebook is an amazing place to see some interesting offers, especially in the world of real estate and mortgages. And while we're on this, one thing I do want to throw out a word of caution to everybody is the scammers are out there. The scams are back. There's one that goes around from time to time where you'll see a property advertised on Craigslist and more recently on Marketplace and Facebook. And it's a rental, and it seems to be a ridiculously low rental price. So a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a pool for $1,400 in West Palm. Well, we all know that's the Loch Ness, not the Loch Ness monster, right? It's just not there. But again, we all want to believe what we want to believe, and it's super enticing. So you call that phone number in the ad and they tell you, listen, I don't have time to show you the property. It's vacant. Just go out there and walk around it, look through the windows, and then call me back. And you do that. You go out. It's a fantastic neighborhood. The kids are excited. They love the idea of having a pool in the backyard. And you call that number back and they say, listen, I'm out of town. I've got a ton of phone calls on this property. If you want me to hold it for you, just send me the first, last, and security. Send me money via Cash App. Wire me the money. And this is starting to become pretty prevalent again. You don't want to fall for that. If it's too good to be true, it most likely is indeed too good to be true. So get a real estate agent on your team who can do that research for you and make sure that you're actually talking to the property owner. And also, too, know that on the buy and lease side, if the real estate agent is representing you, often there's no fee to you. It's paid by the seller or by the landlord. So it's not a cost to have expert representation. So I hear the music behind me. We're going to jump into a break, but on the other side of this, we'll have more questions. You can reach me at 561-291-8569. That's 561-291-8569, or visit the website www.mr.mortgage. Hey, it's Mark Eitel here, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. And you've heard me talk about the valuation tool that we use in our lending practice almost daily. It's not quite an appraisal, but it's way more accurate than one of those online estimates. And we're happy to run one of those reports for you at no charge. Just visit freevaluereport.org. That's freevaluereport.org. Give us a little information about the property, and we'll be happy to send you your report. That's freevaluereport.org.
Here's another 5-star review.
As a realtor, I have a bunch of mortgage brokers to choose from, but I prefer to work with Mark and his Mr. Mortgage team. In this crazy market, there is no room for error, especially on the mortgage side. Mark's team moves fast, keeps everybody in the loop, and makes things happen. They always give my clients a great deal and take the time to walk them through every step of the process. When you're considering a lender, I encourage you to talk to Mark Eitel and the Mr. Mortgage team.
It's not every day that you need an appraisal, whether it's for a divorce settlement, estate planning, or maybe you're appealing a tax assessment, or you just want to make sure you have adequate coverage in your property insurance. When you need a certified appraisal, turn to my friends at soflappraisal.com. That's soflappraisal.com. Peter and his team have been appraising properties here in South Florida for decades. soflappraisal.com. And tell them you heard this on the Mr. Mortgage Show.
Are inflation and everyday expenses eating into your retirement income? Maybe you've considered a reverse mortgage and have unanswered questions like, do I still own my property? Can the bank kick me out? What happens when I die? Can I still leave my house to my kids? These are all great questions. Visit www.moreaboutreverse.com to learn more. That's www.moreaboutreverse.com. www.moreaboutreverse.com.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now, 561-291-8569.
All right, we are back. I am Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. And please give us a call or shoot us your questions to 561-291-8569. Dom's back there manning the board and ready for your questions. But just to finish the topic about getting scammed in this market, that Craigslist/marketplace scam is kind of rearing its ugly head again as rents have increased so much. And it's just super enticing to see that amazing deal out there. And we feel like because we stumbled upon it on Marketplace, it's just an opportunity that no one knows about. And that's why it's such a great deal. But one more super important reason why having the right agent on your team makes a difference. And I know I kind of raced into that break with this, and that's why I wanted to just circle back and clarify. Most often, the on the buyer side of the transaction or on the tenant's side of the transaction, the fee to the real estate agent is paid by either the seller or the landlord. So it really costs you as the buyer or the renter no money to have great professional representation. So I encourage you to do that. If you don't have a great agent, give us a call. I'm happy to get you in touch with somebody that I feel is a rock star. I mean, I'm blessed to work with a lot of really good agents, and I'll be happy to give you a name and a number and encourage you to give them a shout that they'll look out for you. So I didn't want to belabor that, but I just wanted to circle back to it because a lot of times people don't realize how the fee structure in real estate works, and oftentimes there's no fee on your side as a buyer for your real estate agent. But again, all of that is a conversation for you and your agent. I just encourage you to have somebody. And if something seems too good to be true, call someone else for a second opinion. Call me, call my office, and we'll get you in touch with an agent if we can't answer your question on our own. So anyway, that's all I have on that. Just be cautious out there because people do take advantage of situations, and this is where we're seeing it in our industry at the moment. So let's continue jumping into questions. Dom, do we have anything queued up over there?
Yes, we do. We have Jerry from Lantana. Jerry asks, my landlord is getting ready to sell my house. He won't give me a price. He keeps telling me to make an offer. How do I come up with a price? I don't want to overpay. I've already paid him for 6 years.
Wow. So this is interesting because you are the third person this week that I've had this question from. So I think we might be seeing this happen more and more often where landlords are capitalizing on that equity, and maybe they're going to push it into a 1031 exchange and go buy more property with it. Actually, now that I mention that, I'm going to share an idea with you. But first, let me answer Jerry's question, because it is a great question, right? You feel most likely that you should be given a great deal because you've been there for 6 years. I imagine that you've made some repairs and improvements along the way that you never even asked for reimbursement from. You might have changed a ceiling fan or upgraded something just because you wanted to make your apartment or your condo or your home a nicer place to live. So there is a little bit of you're attached to it personally, and you feel like, hey, I've paid you X amount a month for 6 years. I'd like a great deal. Sadly, that's not the reality, right? You would have been renting somewhere anyway. So I would encourage you not to get too attached to the fact that you've, invested in this property in the form of rent over a period of time, because it's easy to get wrapped around the axle there when you're negotiating. And just know that, I guess where I'm going with this is approach it as if you were buying a property that you weren't currently renting, because you need to establish a fair market value to start the negotiation. So this is an easy question to answer. I'm going to encourage you to visit the Free Value Report website. You hear me advertise it every break. It's a tool that we use almost daily in our practice. And what I mean by use in our practice is, if you were to call me and say, hey, my home's worth $800,000, I owe $400,000, how much money can I get out of it? Or I'm thinking of selling it and buying a new house. How much do you think I'm going to get out of it for my down payment? I go to our online, our tool, and run the calculations, and it spits out, as you hear me advertise, an 8 to 10 page report. It's got comps, it's got active listings. It's a very, very robust report. But more importantly, it gives you a range. And within that range, you can determine where you think it's going to fall. So I would encourage you, I'm happy to run that report for you. The easiest way to do it is visit that website, freevaluereport.org, or you can call my office, 561-291-8569, or just hit the website and shoot the address to me. I need your address, or the property address rather, and your email address to shoot you back the report. And then I would encourage you to use that as a jumping off point with the landlord. Now you've got the data to support a price, and maybe he's way off base and he wants, or she, a ridiculously high value. I don't know. But now you've got real data in your hand that can kind of guide your conversation. And then lastly, if he's going to sell it to you without the involvement of a real estate agent, and he's not paying the real estate commission, there may be an opportunity for you to negotiate with your landlord assistance with the closing costs. Certainly, it's worth asking. If they're not going to be going through the inconvenience of reviewing offers and having to evict you if you don't go willingly, and all of the difficulties, of inconveniences, I guess is a better word, of selling a property. They don't have to go through that if they sell it to you. So you may be able to negotiate an opportunity to have them pay some of your closing costs. And we talked about that last week, right? The 3 buckets of cash to close, one of them being closing costs. If that seller will help, or the landlord rather, as the seller, will help reduce that burden to you, that's less cash to close. So I encourage you to have that conversation. It seems like a theme of late. You're the third person this week who I've talked to who has the opportunity to buy the place that they're currently renting, which is awesome, right? Because you don't have to move. It's super convenient. If you like living there and you can negotiate a good price, and man, how great would it be if your mortgage payment is even less than your rent payment? Now it's a home run. If you were super diligent, you would take that monthly savings and apply it to your principal and pay it off even faster. And then it's a viable rental because you've been there for 6 years. So if you ever move, you could keep it and rent it to the next guy. So great opportunity. I encourage you to let us run that report for you, and hopefully that helps you get the conversation started. But on that topic, what kind of dawned on me at the beginning of this conversation was the 1031 tax exchange. So maybe these landlords are seeing the opportunity to capitalize on all this equity and go out there and buy more properties by deferring the taxes via a 1031 exchange. So if you are a landlord and you own a condo, and not Jerry's landlord, we don't want his landlord to beat him up, but if you're a landlord out there and you've got a ton of equity in a property, it might make sense to sell that property. And here, let's use an example. There's a ton of examples like this in our area where, you might have purchased a condo 5 or 6 years ago for $150,000, and it may be worth $400,000 now. That's not unrealistic, the amount of appreciation. Well, that means you have $250,000 in equity. And you hear me talk about the DSCR investor loan. Well, with that $250,000 in equity, you can go out there and buy $1 million worth of property just based on the rental income of the new property. You don't have to be fully underwritten from a income standpoint of your own. And if you're rolling those cash assets into a 1031 exchange and then rolling that into a new purchase, you went from collecting rent on one condo from Jerry, to 4 units. If you bought $1 million fourplex, or you bought 4 condos in another building. So something to think about. I mean, we talk about it all the time. In every market, there's opportunity. And this one's no different. The opportunities may be different, but it doesn't change the fact that they're out there. So if you have questions about that, I encourage a phone call, 561-291-8569. I'd be happy to talk you through it, get you in contact with an attorney that can handle that exchange for you. So anyway, we're going to roll into another break. 561-291-8569 is the Anytime hotline. We'll continue to take your questions after this, or visit the website, www.mr.mortgage. Hey, it's Mark Eitel here, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. And you've heard me talk about the valuation tool that we use in our lending practice almost daily. It's not quite an appraisal, but it's way more accurate than one of those online estimates. And we're happy to run one of those reports for you at no charge. Just visit freevaluereport.org. That's freevaluereport.org. Give us a little information about the property, and we'll be happy to send you your report. That's freevaluereport.org.
Here's another 5-star review.
We kept our business above water with credit cards during the pandemic. I'm glad we did. Business is better than ever. But I didn't want to be a slave to those credit card payments. I called Mark about the rec loan he advertises. Long story short, we did a rec refinance and paid off everything, even the car. Now we only have the mortgage payment. We're saving a bunch every month. Yes, we are happy to recommend Mark and the Mr. Mortgage team.
It's not every day that you need an appraisal, whether it's for a divorce settlement, estate planning, or maybe you're appealing a tax assessment, or you just want to make sure you have adequate coverage in your property insurance. When you need a certified appraisal, turn to my friends at soflappraisal.com. That's soflappraisal.com. Peter and his team have been appraising properties here in South Florida for decades. soflappraisal.com. And tell them you heard this on the Mr. Mortgage Show.
Are inflation and everyday expenses eating into your retirement income? Maybe you've considered a reverse mortgage and have unanswered questions like, do I still own my property? Can the bank kick me out? What happens when I die? Can I still leave my house to my kids? These are all great questions. Visit www.moreaboutreverse.com to learn more. That's www.moreaboutreverse.com. www.moreaboutreverse.com.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now, 561-291-8569.
Yes, please call us now. 561-291-8569 is the Anytime hotline. Dom is standing by in the studio to grab that call if you call, or shoot us a text. But just to finally finish up, because I know I have a tendency to do that, but on Jerry's point, yeah, buy that property now if you can, if the price makes sense, because I just flashed through my notes, and how waiting costs you is, in addition to pricing going up, with interest rates going up, anything you buy is going to become less affordable. So I read a article this week that outlined how on an average $400,000 purchase price, an interest rate moving a half a point, pushed, a ridiculous number of people out of the market, like to the tune of, I don't even remember, but well over 1 million people in this particular market that they studied. So it's already getting out of control. Jump in while you can, while rates are still affordable. So let me throw it over to Dom and keep the questions rolling. What do we have?
All right, we have Bob from Lake Worth. Bob is asking, I'm going to sell a couple of classic cars for my down payment. I read about seasoning. How long does the money need to be in the bank before I can apply for my loan?
Hey, that's a great question, Bob. But do me a favor and shoot me some pictures and specs on those cars before you sell them, because any one of you who knows me outside of the show knows I'm a car head. So I definitely like all things motorcycles, muscle cars, rock and roll music, and of course mortgages. So yeah, great question. And I commend you for doing the research, because a lot of people go into that and they're going to sell a Rolex or their boat or whatever they have, asset wise laying around the house for the down payment. And then they run into that seasoning issue. And just, you've obviously done the reading, so you know what seasoning is, but just to kind of clarify it for all of our listeners, oftentimes when you have a big lump sum of money pop into your checking account, that raises red flag, or your savings account, whatever the case may be, it raises red flags. So typically the bank is going to want to see that money's seasoned, that it's been there for a period of time, because they don't want you to have just gone out and, borrowed $25,000 from your Uncle Vinny, and now you've got a new obligation. So seasoning refers to how long the asset has been documented in your checking or savings account. And if you've already put the money in there, that's one thing. It typically needs to be there for 60 to 90 days. So you're going to want at least 2 full bank statement cycles to have that money there. And that gives the opportunity for the lender to see there's no new debt on your credit report showing up against that large deposit. So based on that, they're comfortable moving forward that it's not a loan, that it was, the sale of an asset. But if you haven't sold them yet, give me a call, because there is a way to do it where you do not need to season the funds. However, you need to document it. You need to, have the bill of sale for the car. It's helpful if we see the advertisement. If you sell that old, 68 Camaro on Marketplace, let's see that ad. Let's see the bill of sale. If you can show the title being transferred, that's awesome. But here's the big thing. If you sell the car for $20,000, and I don't know what a 69 Camaro is worth, it's probably worth, depending on the condition, a heck of a lot more than 20 grand. But let's say whatever you sell is 20 grand. Let's say you sold a 54 F100, fully restored, and you got $35,000 for it. That's one I just saw, so I know it's true. You're going to deposit that $35,000 exactly. Don't deposit $31,000 and put 4 under your mattress, because now you can't. It's not documentable. It doesn't make sense how that money went in there. And worse than that is if you put, $35,000 for the F100, and then you had another $5,000 laying around. You put $40,000 in there. It doesn't document out. So if you haven't sold it yet, give me a call. Not that I want to buy it. Maybe I would, but that I want to walk you through how to properly document the transaction so you can avoid seasoning if you're in a hurry and you don't have that time. But to answer your question, seasoning is 2 to 3 bank statement cycles. If you're not able to season it, let's fully document the transaction, and then you can use the cash right away. So I hear the siren rolling up behind me. That means we've ended another segment. As always, the Anytime Hotline's the easiest way to get me on or off the air. That's 561-291-8569, 561-291-8569, or hit the website www.mr.mortgage, never a .com, mr.mortgage. Thank you.
That's a wrap. Join Mark Eitel next week for more thrilling, edge-of-your-seat discussions about real estate and mortgages, right here on The Mr. Mortgage Show.
Hey, it's Mark Eitel here, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. And you've heard me talk about the valuation tool that we use in our lending practice almost daily. It's not quite an appraisal, but it's way more accurate than one of those online estimates. And we're happy to run one of those reports for you at no charge. Just visit freevaluereport.org. That's freevaluereport.org. Give us a little information about the property, and we'll be happy to send you your report. That's freevaluereport.org.